And now you see it in gas stations, whole food stores, health stores, pharmacies. I mean, CBD, you probably see it everywhere.
Hey, it's Nate DiSarro, and welcome to Titans of Industry, the podcast where I talk to industry leaders and innovators who are at the top of their game and leading the pack in their fields, uncovering some of the best stories in today's business landscape. In today's episode, I sit down with Hillary Blackburn, a pharmacist based in Nashville, Tennessee, who has created a career path that goes well beyond what you think a normal pharmacist does. Hillary covers everything from opioids to how patients can navigate the current state of drug prices. And of course, we dive into CBD and its place in the pharmacy world. And we get into her journey of becoming an author and empowering other women. And now let's get to the episode. But before we do, it's important to know that whether you're a small business owner or the face of a multi-billion-dollar industry, your organization has a great story to tell, and Content Titan wants to help you tell it. We are a digital content creation powerhouse built for the 21st century, providing all-in creative, strategic, production, post-production, and distribution services for a 360-degree, 24/7 world. In our world, Titans are passionate, creative doers. They have the experience to take your project from start to finish, minimizing your involvement so you can focus on what matters most, running your business. So if you're ready to take your content strategy and production to the next level, our Titans are ready to help. Now here's my conversation with Hillary Blackburn. Well, Hillary, thanks so much for hopping on the podcast with us. Look forward to this conversation. So I just want to start by kind of getting your background. How did you decide you wanted to be a pharmacist?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Great to be on the show. And, you know, I always knew that I wanted to go into medicine, from picking like Clara Barton, who is a famous nurse during the Civil War, is, a childhood, kind of book report project, and doing things like doing the National Youth Leadership Forum on Medicine as a high schooler. I always thought that I was going to be a doctor. And actually, it was during a Scholars Day at the University of Mississippi that I ran into one of the pharmacy professors, and he talked me into doing early entry pharmacy. And so what that is as a high school senior, they accept 50 students, and, talked with my parents, and they were like, this sounds like a great idea. You could do pharmacy and then go on to medical school. And so I really thought that was kind of the direction that I was going to go. But, really, after being in pharmacy school and getting exposed to all of the different opportunities within pharmacy, especially during that last year where it's all rotation based and you're, rounding in places like in the ER or in the ICU and working with interdisciplinary teams, I just fell in love with that area. It's a great field for a female. More and more females are going into pharmacy, and so a little bit more flexibility, but still so many great opportunities within pharmacy. So
Very cool. So you finish your schooling, you come out. Was your first job as a pharmacist? What were you doing right off the bat?
Yeah, so actually during school, I served as an intern at CVS in my hometown, small town in Mississippi Delta, where I grew up. And so that was great. I was able to get experience and make some money. And so, but I kind of knew that the retail pharmacy setting wasn't exactly where I wanted to stay, but had some great experience there. Even as a student, I had a little bit of a different turn in that I had interned on Capitol Hill, and that was just interning for a Mississippi senator, and thought, wow, how fun is DC? But how do I go back for pharmacy? And so pharmacy is a small world, and there was an Ole Miss alum that was the director of the Office of Pharmacy Affairs, which is part of HRSA, or Health Resources and Services Administration, part of HHS. And they administer this very big program called the 340B drug program. And it is a government program where any manufacturer that is participating in Medicare has to give discounted drug prices to safety net hospitals. And so got exposed to that, more of kind of a program aspect. Definitely always had a passion for underserved communities, growing up in a rural town and in Mississippi, a lot of some impoverished areas. And, had that experience, but really loved all the clinical things that I was getting to do at the Academic Medical Center in Jackson, Mississippi. And, so I did a residency. Actually, there are residency programs for pharmacists, just like in medicine. And, right after, I wasn't quite sure exactly what I was going to do. I thought I was going to go the hospital pharmacy route. And, was looking at jobs. A lot of times, many of the ones that are available for new graduates are you're working night shift, or, some of the hours just aren't great, or you're, a staff pharmacist. And I don't know, none of those kind of really seem to be that exciting. I also I'm pretty social, and, work-life balance is important to me, having some weekends, and kind of didn't think I wanted to stay in Mississippi. And a lot of Ole Miss people are in Nashville, and made the move to Nashville, worked for a family friend at an independent pharmacy, and that's how I got to Nashville. So that was the first job out of school.
Very cool. So one of the things that I think is interesting about the pharmacy profession is, when I think of pharmacists most of the time, and I think a lot of people, you think of CVS or Walgreens or your local drugstore,
right,
and you got to go pick up a prescription. But it's a much bigger world than that. So talk me through the different areas that people can get the jobs in as a pharmacist outside of Walgreens, CVS, your local drugstore.
Exactly. Usually that is exactly what people say. I say, I'm a pharmacist, and, oh, do you work at CVS or Walgreens? And neither. So, I still will do a little moonlighting at Walgreens. It's great to still kind of keep my feet wet with retail. Lots of customer service there. But there are so many different areas of pharmacy practice. You've got hospital, and I mentioned a few different areas of that. You've got ambulatory care, so pharmacists embedded in physician clinics, and that's really becoming popular as more and more specialty drugs are hitting the market. When I mean specialty drugs, those are more of the high cost, high management type of medications for like RA, rheumatoid arthritis, oncology, those types of disease states. And so having a pharmacist manage the drug, because it's, these drugs are thousands and thousands of dollars. So if the patients aren't taking them appropriately, they had a side effect, we got to kind of counsel them through some of those things. So that's certainly an area. You're seeing more in pharmacogenomics. So looking at your gene therapy. Some people are fast metabolizers of medicine or slow metabolizers. Working for the pharmaceutical industry, working for government, academia. There's a lot of different areas of practice. Yes.
So you pretty much hit retail, institutional, government. I mean, any major industry, it pretty much, there could be a pharmacist there.
Yeah.
And they kind of have their own world to live in. I'm always curious, you've been at it for a few years now, but you're not that old. But I'm sure there's been some transition, some innovation, some changes since you probably came out of school. And or where do you see the industry going? What are some of the new trends, innovations that you see happening?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing happening is moving from that dispensing model. Pharmacists doing mostly dispensing to more utilizing their clinical skill set. And so more of the medication therapy management, doing more within the doctor's office. The doctor is going to be doing all of the diagnosis and things like that. But a lot of times patients are coming in if they've got hypertension or diabetes or things, and they're seeing a pharmacist to manage and titrate those medications. So I think that informatics is definitely a huge field. Data, every industry, you're seeing data having more and more importance, and that's certainly the case in healthcare as well. And so having a clinical informatics pharmacist on your team is huge to be able to manage different order sets or predictive analytics of like disease states and things. So a lot of changes happening, certainly in healthcare, and definitely within the pharmacy profession. Seeing a lot in the news lately about, what it looks like supermarkets are getting out of the dispensing space. So it's not as profitable because you've got pharmacy benefit managers or PBMs that drug prices are certainly a hot topic right now, and it's a very complex process between the manufacturer and it getting to the patient. And I think that pharmacists can be part of that solution in helping patients navigate how to make sure they can get access to their medicine, and then that they're taking it appropriately.
That brings up a good point as well. I want to talk a little bit about GPOs, maybe the role of telehealth in how that plays into pharmaceuticals and getting those drugs to the patient with, because to your point about pharmacists working at the retail level, it's a lot of customer service. There's a lot of things that go into that. But when you look at GPOs and getting, how does it get from the manufacturer to the patient? Maybe skipping over the retail side of things. The Amazon approach, if you will, there's mail order, there's all kinds of ways. So talk a little bit about how do you see that playing out in the industry, and how is that changing things? Yeah,
so GPOs are group purchasing organizations. Health systems use those. Other groups use those so that they can increase their buying power. They are negotiating with either manufacturers or wholesale distributors to make sure that they're getting the best price. And so it is interesting about what that best price is, because you sometimes will get rebates or depending on, a health insurance plan. That's often what you see when a patient's going into the retail pharmacy setting is, what is their copay? So, you've got a copay. First you've got a deductible, and that always hits the beginning of the year. And so every January, patients are coming in saying, this isn't how much I used to pay for this. And so they've got to hit their deductible first, and then they've got a copay that, is kind of an assigned number. And then typically they will, and then that kind of shifts once they've hit that deductible, and then maybe the plan is going to pay for more. And so all of that kind of changes. And so being knowledgeable about some of that is helpful, and being able to kind of help answer questions to patients about, why is my prescription this amount? Or a lot of times, patients will be started on a new drug, and it requires a prior authorization from the doctor. And so maybe their insurance plan doesn't have that drug covered, or they've got to do some kind of step therapy. And then you're kind of in this triangle between the patients in the middle. They're at the pharmacy, but the doctor has to give the approval, and then the insurance company then approves it for the pharmacy to dispense. So it's not very transparent. There's not a lot of transparency right now in within the prescription space, and so hopefully that's something that they're going to be addressing in the future. But yeah, GPOs, there's a lot of big ones that can certainly help leverage good pricing out there, but not all of those solutions are. I mean, we've got lots of different plans. Whether the government can negotiate for Medicare prices and Medicaid prices, that's been proposed. Drug importation. There's some concerns about that. There's been a lot of proposals on how to lower drug prices, but it seems that a lot of those have been blocked, and maybe not necessarily every solution has been quite the right fit. There's been a few concerns, so hopefully we'll be able to find some kind of solution maybe after November, when everyone, all of the legislators are kind of, their seats are saved, and then they can bring that back up. So we'll see.
It's all incredibly interesting, and I think there's just, like most industries, there's just so many nuances that it's hard to figure it out all with one conversation.
Complicated.
There's a lot of things that go into it. Another hot button topic that's going around right now, of course, there's kind of two sides to it from the way I see it. There's an opioid epidemic, as they say, and then now there's a CBD revolution. And is there any relationship between those? And where do you see, from a pharmacist perspective, what are we doing about this opioid situation? And then what's going on in the CBD world?
Yeah, so opioid epidemic kind of first. And there's a great Netflix documentary out right now called The Pharmacist. So I was able to watch that. I think it just came out kind of early February. So it is a great story, and it describes an independent pharmacist or community pharmacist in St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana, which was one of the hot spots. That area was one of the top. They wrote some of the most prescriptions for OxyContin. And so actually the drug manufacturer Purdue Pharma had all the data of who were the top prescribers in the country. And somehow, there was a doctor that was a pill mill. She was only open, in the evenings. At night, people would wait outside. Really incredible story about how he lost a son and then started really noticing to drug abuse, and then realized that he started taking note of people in his community that were young or healthy, and they were getting prescriptions for OxyContin. And this is back when there was still some uncertainty on the amount of addiction that pain meds were causing. And then, of course, now we know that there's a much tighter correlation. And so it's a great story telling about how he was able to start doing some counseling to patients. And then he actually was able to kind of help flip the scale on this doctor and helped supported the case to be able to kind of take down this pill mill. And it was the second biggest one. There was another doctor out of Portsmouth, Ohio, and there's a different book that I would recommend if people are really interested in the opioid epidemic to read. What is that book called? I'll have to think of it.
We'll track it down and put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll have to remember what it is, but now I can't recall. But a really great one, and I'll have to look it up and get back to you. But yeah, so I think it's neat to be able to track some of those things, and there really hasn't been a pharmacist in the media with that kind of much public attention. And so it's kind of neat, even here within the last week or so, I've seen where the Boston Red Sox are doing a pharmacist appreciation night. So I don't know if there's any kind of link there, but it's like, oh, there's kind of some exciting things happening around the profession, which is fun. So, Dreamland, that's the book.
Dreamland.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it. We'll take a look. Yeah, because I think it's interesting. I've known some people and told some stories of people who have had opioid addictions and just the way that it can ruin lives, both end lives as well as ruin lives that are still ongoing. And it's just unfortunate to see that. But obviously there's got to be other ways around.
Yeah, and a lot's changed. So now there are prescription monitoring programs where, pharmacists are required to check the prescription database. And so they can see if you came in and you were going to, your doctor shopping. So you got multiple prescriptions from different doctors, or we can also see what other pharmacies have you gotten this filled at. And so, if you came in to, my Walgreens pharmacy and I'm in Nashville and you've got a prescription from a doctor in Kentucky, pharmacists are allowed to use their good, clinical judgment, good faith dispensing laws and make decisions on whether they think that it's, a legitimate prescription. And there are certain things in place. Tennessee has even implemented some major restrictions on controlled substances. We're really trying to get away from doctors writing as many controlled substances out of like the emergency rooms. You don't have as many drug seekers going in because they know that they're not going to be able to get that. They're limiting those prescriptions to 3-day supplies. If it is longer, they have to have a diagnosis code on the prescription. So, a lot of times pharmacists counseling on naloxone. So that's a huge thing too, is making the opioid reversal agent available and kind of targeting patients. Like, we don't think that you're a drug abuser or you're, but if you're on a high dose opioid prescription, then they might be eligible for naloxone. Or a lot of times, it's the bystander. It's not the person that overdoses that is going to be administering the naloxone. It is a family member, a friend, law enforcement agent that they've got to carry those around so that they can help reverse that opioid overdose. And so you mentioned CBD.
Yeah,
too.
I know it's not necessarily connected, but I think a lot of people are looking at CBD as pain relief and sometimes chronic pain relief, things that in some cases people get hooked on opioids for chronic pain. And then now we see people using CBD to hopefully relieve some of that pain as well. But from a pharmacy perspective and sort of within the medical and healthcare industry, how is CBD changing things, or is it changing things?
Yeah, well, so CBD or cannabidiol is part of the cannabis sativa plant, and cannabis or marijuana is, a lot of, it's, I guess, more commonly known. So it's actually been around for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, even the Chinese emperors in like 2000 BC, there's been documentation that, they even used cannabis. And even some of the early American presidents were growing hemp as a crop, and you can get CBD from hemp or from the cannabis plant. And so CBD is actually the non-psychoactive component. The THC is that causes more of that euphoric feeling. And so, there are several states, I think, definitely over 30 states that have actually approved medical cannabis. About 19 or so have approved recreational laws. So, you see that coming from the West and then making its way over to the East. So a lot of different laws. And then actually the Farm Bill legalized CBD, so no THC, it's got to be less than 0.03% CBD. That was legalized in December of 2018. And so now you see it in gas stations, Whole Food stores, health stores, pharmacies. I mean, CBD, you probably see it everywhere. It's in face care. It is in, there is apparently a restaurant outside of Nashville that has all CBD infused foods.
Well, I know CBD coffee is a big thing now. Everybody's drinking their CBD every morning.
Coffee. So I will tell you that, you know, there are a lot of potential benefits from CBD, like anti-inflammatory, or, you know, other protective things. There's a lot of claims about CBD, but there are certainly some concerns with it because it's not regulated. It's not a drug. It's not regulated by the FDA. So it is kind of the wild, wild west. You could have people that are growing it in, you know, their basement and like bottling it up, and you're not quite sure exactly what the percentages are. And so there are some concerns. I mean, I would tell the public that, you know, there's certainly some benefits. You know, I've recommended it to my dad. You know, he has a lot of like joint pain. He's a cyclist, but also kind of like a bigger, like kind of stout guy. And so, yeah, as he's gotten older, I'm like, you could try CBD, but it is something that you also have to worry about with drug. You know, what does your workplace have in place about drug policies? Because you could potentially fail a drug test. It actually happened to a lady in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville, that hit the front page of the Tennessean, or, you know, one of the news journals, that she was a Murfreesboro city employee, and instead of taking anxiety meds, whether it was too expensive, or a lot of people, you know, are into trying other therapies, there aren't a lot of negative side effects with CBD. As I mentioned, it doesn't cause some of those euphoric feelings, but depending on how much THC is possibly in there, you could potentially fail a drug test like she did. And she lost her job because, you know, her workplace had a zero tolerance for drugs. And so it's interesting.
She's just trying to sleep better at night.
So, yeah, sleep is another supposed benefit of CBD. So I don't know that it is interesting about, you know, like, oh, well, are we going to have less of the opioids if we increase medical cannabis? And there have been a few studies that have maybe shown that, and at least it is another option. I don't think that CBD is completely non-addictive. There could still certainly be some addictive, you know, tendencies. So, yeah, I think there's still a lot to be known about CBD, but yeah, a lot of attention on the opioid crisis and epidemic right now. So
well, and it's interesting to look at it from a business perspective too. You've seen these businesses pop up out of nowhere, and to your point, the regulation piece. So, I mean, if I was going to say I want to go buy a bottle of CBD oil, what would you recommend? What do I look for? Where do I find a reputable source? I mean, how can you help guide people in that direction?
Yeah, well, I would definitely recommend, you know, trying to get it from, you know, a doctor's office or pharmacy, because, you know, they hopefully have some kind of medical grade one, and they're going to be a little bit more regulated, you know, or a little bit more probably concerned about regulations. And so, you know, CBD can certainly be tested for quality and the batches and things. And so I think, you know, one that has been proven to have good quality, like one of those products that would be in a pharmacy, or you know, I don't know how much I would trust it from a gas station. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Do you think one day that kind of like these days we can go get Advil from the store, and Advil's the brand name. We can get the Kroger brand or the store brand, however we want to do that. The generic versus brand name aspect
it's all about marketing. Are you going to go for the high end line and you've got really pretty packaging and everything? Well, people are probably going to pay more for that. Or there's probably plenty of products that are like middle of the line. I think you just have to find one that, what does the quality testing look like on it? And so, there is a lot of money to be made because people don't know, like, well, what is that price point? And so, at least, sometimes online you can comparison shop. I think that you'll start to see maybe some brands that are, kind of recommended. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, and I want to kind of broach that subject as well with general pharmaceuticals, because every time I go to the pharmacy, they say generic or brand name, and what's the difference from a pharmacy? Dispel the mystery. I mean, do I need the brand name? Is that something I need to pay extra for?
Well, it depends. So, there are certain medicines that have a very narrow therapeutic index, and that means that like warfarin, it's a blood thinner, or people that take medicine for their thyroid, levothyroxine, the brand name is Synthroid. Those have to be within a certain level. And so when you're switching between different products, even between different brands, like maybe this manufacturer makes the white pill and this manufacturer makes a blue pill, there can be a little bit of variation within certain products. That's a very limited number of those, but you'll notice, and patients should ask for the same thing. Like once they get stabilized, maybe on the generic levothyroxine, then they should stick with that. But the FDA, any new product is going to be a branded product. They're doing the research and development on those. But in about 2012, had the patent cliff. So a lot of these like big blockbuster drugs like Lipitor and other things went generic. And so to be approved as a generic, they have to prove that they've got same active ingredient, same pharmacokinetic profile, that it's going to basically do the same thing. There may be very slight variations, but it has been approved, by the FDA that it's essentially the same. So there's a big difference between price, and I have been a big fan of generics. About 80 or 90% of all medications dispensed are generics right now, although the specialty drugs account for most of the cost. But generics play a huge role in managing, chronic illness, and, about 50% of Americans have high blood pressure, and so most of that can be managed with generics. Now, there is some things that are kind of happening that is now percolating on quality. There have been a few books that have just hit, one called Bottle of Lies, and that is an author did some investigative journaling looking at what the quality in some of these overseas manufacturers looks like, because the FDA can go into any plant in the U.S. at any time unannounced and make a visit. And so they've got to make sure they're up to par and they're following all of the regulations. Well, it doesn't quite look like that when they go and visit a manufacturing plant in India or China or somewhere else. And so that has really just been starting to become something that that people are aware of. And so I think that, it's not anything to be alarmed at right now, but I think we'll begin to learn more as some of these things become. I was actually able to interview the author of China RX within the last couple weeks, and she was able to look at, we all think of like made in China. You've got toys, or you have, electronics. You don't really think about drug. Like, where's your drug made? It's not stamped on your pill or, your over-the-counter med. But 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredient, like what makes a drug, and like has the properties, are coming from China. And so it's really interesting to see like something like the coronavirus right now, when something like that hits one country and it's a sole producer of the whole world's active pharmaceutical ingredient, that really impacts the supply chain. And so we're already starting to see the FDA just announced within the last week that there's about 150 drugs that could potentially be on shortage. We've already seen drug shortages and things. I think we're going to see that probably even more with the coronavirus, just because factories are shut down over there. I think just today we're announcing that one unnamed manufacturer alerted them that they were going to be on drug shortage. And I was like, how helpful is that if it's an unnamed manufacturer? So I think in the
protecting their stock prices,
in the next couple weeks, pharmacists are going to have to play a huge role on, all right, well, what are the therapeutic alternatives so that if patients can't get this drug, what's something that's comparable?
Wow. I mean, I hadn't even thought about that, the impact of where your drugs are coming from and how that makes sense, which is why stock prices are all over the place right now. These companies don't know what to do about it. So it's crazy. So I want to shift gears a little bit, talk about some of the things you've been doing, where your career's headed. I know we've talked a little bit about some of the things you do. You've got your own podcast. You do some consulting for pharmacies. And women in leadership positions, things like that. So talk a little bit about where you're headed and what you kind of see on the forefront of the direction you're going.
Yeah. So, I've loved all of the clinical experience that I've had, early on in my career. But over the past couple of years, as I've been at Dispensary of Hope, which is a nonprofit wholesale medication distributor here in Nashville, more of those responsibilities have been more in management administration. And so I actually went back last year and got my MBA, and thought that would be helpful because a lot of times pharmacists or, people in healthcare don't have a lot of those business skills. We're in science classes. So, the accounting and finance and things were things that I wanted to get a little more confidence on. And so there's always a good time to go back to school, going through, different seasons and things. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that. Did it through my employer, had a great, they helped with some tuition. That's always great. And actually picked a program that's online to be able to, it fit best with my schedule. And so I was, a night warrior and weekend warrior for doing that. So that was great. And I think that that leadership in healthcare, particularly women in leadership, I mentioned, more and more women are in pharmacy, and actually women make the majority of the healthcare decisions for, most American families. But you've got so many women in the healthcare workforce, but not as many people in leadership, not as many women in leadership. And so I think that that's something that I like to help kind of shine that light and encourage women leaders. Hopefully I can compile some of the female leaders in pharmacy that I've had the pleasure of interviewing over the past 2.5 years, be able to share their stories and hopefully put it into a book. Thinking of a title, maybe like Women to Watch. And so we'll see. But that's something that I've really been interested in. And I think that even other, companies that are not in healthcare are trying to add more women to board of directors and things. I think that, it's okay to be ambitious and, just showing some great female role models is always helpful.
So let's go there. Female role models, titans, people that you look up to. Who would you kind of put into that category? Yeah.
So there's certainly been, women that have been great leaders in pharmacy that I've looked up to. I think Sandra Leal, she's now the president for the American Pharmacist Association. She's been great. I think Susan Cantrell, Lucinda Main. But, honestly, there have been, I think there's a lot of other women business people. I think Ivanka Trump does a great job of being professional. I think a lot of the TV broadcasters that have kind of made their way, like Gretchen Carlson and Megyn Kelly, they've had to face a lot of adversity. Even my mother-in-law, she's a U.S. Senator, Marsha Blackburn. She has made her way and is a great female leader and has done so many amazing things to kind of show women in the policy and legislature. So a lot of different, but I've also had a lot of great male mentors as well. So have just really been able to get connected with several men who have recently retired, and they have been such great mentors to me over the past couple of years. And I've gotten connected with them through Dispensary of Hope. So I've been so grateful for them and some of the coaching from them. So
it's really cool. I think it's always fun to hear people's who have helped shape their world, their career, their philosophies, because that's really what we're all after. We want to get connected with people and sort of become our own version of ourselves, but kind of see how they did it and how can we adapt that into the way we're doing it.
Totally. And I mean, honestly, I think really my parents were kind of instrumental in helping to, I'm an achiever, and as an only child, they put all of their effort, and I was able to do, I was pushed academically for my mom, who's a teacher, and my dad helps coach me in just about every sport. So, excellence was always driven home from that early age, but had such a supportive family and really felt like I could achieve anything that I wanted to achieve. So they'd always have supported my dreams and have done everything that they could to help make that be a reality. So
it's really cool. I want to move into some quick hit question and answers. So I'm going to throw a few things out. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. Best or latest book that you've read?
Ooh, best or latest book. I'm reading Atomic Habits right now, actually on Audible. So I think
that counts. Or listen to, absolutely.
That's the best.
So talk. What's that all about?
So I think there's been so many. 7 Habits for Highly Effective People was kind of like life changing for me. I think I got it as a resident years ago, and didn't think I had time to read that. I was kind of burnt out on reading and studying and all of that. Picked that back up in my role at Dispensary of Hope, and it has been so eye-opening. And so I'm always looking for leadership books and things. And so Atomic Habits just kind of helps to reiterate some of the things that you think but he's been able to kind of prove some of these good methods. And so it's just a good kind of refresher. Mm-hmm.
What's a daily routine that you can't skip over?
Daily routine. I always try to build in some exercise. At least 5 or 6 days a week. I've always been active, as I mentioned, did lots of sports growing up. So that's really part of my identity. And luckily I have a spouse that's also a passion. And so it's great that we were able to kind of do that together. Other than that, I always have to have breakfast every day.
I feel you on that one. I can't skip breakfast.
I'm like, you got to start your day out right. And good sleep, making sure you get enough sleep. We don't have little ones running around quite yet, but hopefully I'll still be able to have that balance when that happens. So,
love it. What's a piece of advice you've been given or received, or something you like to give to other people?
I think just being willing to take opportunities. I didn't know where I was going for that HRSA internship. I just went, and it's been such a great, unique experience for me to draw from, I think for the rest of my career. The role at Dispensary of Hope, there was never it was a brand new role. And so it's kind of a leap of faith. I'm like, a nonprofit, what is this? And, so I think, taking opportunities, has been something that has always been important. And then, personal development is so important. You've got to kind of keep learning and growing and developing, and there will be seasons, but I think that's a really important piece too.
So speaking of personal development, what's a newly formed habit or something you're working on right now that you're trying
habits. I'm always trying to, stay on top of leadership books and blogs and things, and staying on top of current trends. I would say that's probably just trying to stay current on some of those. And then, I feel very fulfilled in being able to have the Talk to Your Pharmacist podcast as a way to always learn from others, and by interviewing and telling their stories. So, those would be kind of ways.
Love it. So we already kind of hit on this, but if you could write a book, what would the title be? You said you're working on something like that, but that's kind of something you want to do.
Yeah, I would love to write a book. I think I've always thought about that and wasn't quite sure what that would be. And I think women in leadership, and I'm really thinking about women to watch, and I've got a little bit more of a tagline. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking so far. So hopefully that will come to fruition.
Love it. And what are some hobbies outside of exercise that you like to get out and do? Are you a music lover? Do you go to concerts? What?
Yeah, well, we're in Nashville, which is definitely a music town, and there's plenty to do. I would say I'm kind of a foodie. I like to try new restaurants and things like that. Love to travel. That's something that, my husband and I share. We just got back from a week-long trip in Italy, and got to do all of that. So we love to travel. We love to do triathlons in the summer, pretty active outdoors. But yeah, Nashville's a great place to be. And, just doing things with friends. There's so many fun activities. So, yeah.
Well, I've got to ask, favorite place in Italy that you went? Did y'all bounce around a lot? Or?
We did. We we flew in and out of Milan, and it is actually during the winter, flights are really cheap. Most everyone goes in the summer. So, flights were pretty cheap. Hotels, we play the points game. And so that was great. Travel Freely is the website that my husband uses. And so we actually only paid for one hotel night the whole time we were there.
Wow.
But yeah, Venice for a few days, the Dolomites, skiing, and stopped in Como, which it's better to go there during the summer. Still neat to see. And then Milan. And Milan, I was very pleasantly surprised with Milan. Everyone kind of says, oh, it's fashion and shopping, and they certainly have all of that. But you don't realize that, not only is the Duomo that big cathedral, but the Last Supper is there. Lots of neat things. Yeah.
That's really cool. It's on my short bucket list. I mean, that's one of the first things is to get to Italy. So it's exciting to hear. You mentioned food. You're a foodie. Are you a healthy eater? Do you indulge every once in a while? What's your kind of favorite foods?
Yeah. It's hard to say a set favorite food. I try to do more of the I'm not a strict keto eater, but I typically try to not do that many carbs. But I'm everything in kind of moderation. So I totally have a sweet tooth. And so, dark chocolate, I gotta have some of that from time to time. But yeah, it's all about balance and, moderation.
That's awesome. So Hillary, where can people follow you, find you, hear you? What are some ways people can get in touch?
Yeah, so definitely active on LinkedIn, Hillary Blackburn. I'm sometimes on Twitter, Hill Blackburn. I've got a podcast called Talk to Your Pharmacist, and my Instagram handle is @TalkToYourPharmacist. So lots of different ways. And happy to answer any pharmacy related questions. So it's great to be able to chat and talk more with you about the pharmacy profession.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. This was a great conversation, and best of luck with your book. Let's get that done.
I know. Got to get that done. I have high hopes. So that is a 2020 goal. So now that more people know, then they'll be looking for it. I'll have to get it done. So well, thanks. I enjoyed the conversation, and it was an honor to be a guest. Thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. If you liked this episode of Titans of Industry, head to contenttitan.co/podcast for more episodes, or subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks for listening.